Ghana's youth have further experienced how a minister could stash millions of dollars in her home. And only God knows the full extent of Ghanaians' taxpayers' money that is stashed away by many others in this Akuffo Addo and Bawumia-led government. But I say to the good people of Ghana that working with Ghanaians and their international and anti-corruption partners, we shall do all that is humanly possible to retrieve such wrongly acquired wealth. The inequality and selective justice of this government are galling. Otherwise, how could Hawa Kumsin, who fired a weapon at a registration center and boasted about it, walk away free? And a parliamentary candidate for Ewutu Senya East is detained partly because the very police that issued her with a firearms license misspelled her name. If the government was seeking to break the spirit of Nakoyo with that politically organized arrest, they rather handed over the Ewutu Senya East parliamentary seat to the young woman who by all standards towers over and above the incumbent. My dear youth, while I agree with your justifiable anger and disappointment, I urge you to keep hope alive. Have faith in God and the power of your thumb. However, let me assure you that no matter the challenges or artificial obstacles they erect in your path to prevent you from exercising your franchise, my victory in the polls shall be your victory. It shall be a victory for all the suffering Ghanaians. It will be a victory for all of us. And I'm sure that's going to happen on 7th December this year. There's a rising feeling of frustration and anger bubbling up amongst our young people. Justifiable anger and frustration against this failed administration. It is anger against the economic mismanagement, the hardships, the widening inequalities in our country, and the unprecedented corruption that has become the signature of this government. And yes, you have every right to be angry and disappointed in this government. It is understandable because this government has received more funds than any other government in the history of our country.
Whenever I say my PENDREAM TV there, I see them yopo.
You were for a PENDREAM TV in Pacho. When say the news not off from near the brow. News ya ubabeti in Pacho. So what in Trebia and also what in Trefa. News via I present your platform where you saw for your voice note not fast here. I was 0277 128 777. The debate 2 PENDREAM FM so Magana for you nothing okay. Young court tea and a story at the brow.
Hello everyone, I'm John Mahama, former President of Ghana, leader and presidential candidate of the National Democratic Congress in this year's presidential and parliamentary elections to be held on 7th December. I'm excited to welcome you back to my regular John Mahama live sessions. These live digital sessions will be part of a series of interactions I have christened the Mahama Conversations. It will be a platform to engage with Ghana's vibrant and dynamic youth and people. I want to share my thoughts, my plans and views directly with you, to hear from you, listen to your concerns and discuss the issues that matter most to you. I've always believed that your voices are crucial in shaping the future of our country. And I'm committed to working with you to create a better Ghana, to build the Ghana we all want together. So in the next few weeks, I'll sit with and discuss another set of issues with a team of journalists so we can explore the solutions to our challenges together. So let's get the conversation started tonight. Post your questions under the live stream on my Facebook, X or YouTube channel. You can also email me at office@johnmahama.org. I look forward to our discussions after my presentation. Now let me start by congratulating all of you who registered to vote in the just ended exercise and will be voting for the first time in December. In a very special way, I thank you for responding massively and positively when I asked you to register for change. Your turnout has exceeded the target that was set by the Electoral Commission, And I'm very sure that but for the geographical and economic restrictions that were harshly imposed by the government and the EC, many more of you would have gotten the opportunity to register to exercise your franchise on 7th December this year. Currently, an exercise is ongoing to enable those eligible to transfer your votes or replace your lost or damaged voter ID cards and to apply for proxy voting if you will not be available on the 7th of December. We have only 5 more days to go for this exercise, and I urge every one of you eligible to participate in the ongoing exercise to do so before the deadline of Friday the 14th June 2024. This election is like no other in the history of Ghana. It is an election between Ghana and the new Patriotic Party administration. It is an election for change, to reset Ghana's narrative and effect a course correction from our disastrous trajectory. This change is ordained by God. It is ordained by God to relieve our people from the hardship and poverty that has been inflicted by President Akuffo Addo and Dr. Bawumia's reckless administration. That change will put Ghana back on a path of progress and prosperity, enabling us to build the Ghana we want and create well-paying jobs for the young people of this country through the 24-hour economy initiative and many other novel policies to be outdoored in the NDC manifesto soon. This change will also see the most far-reaching and detailed investigation of the many allegations of corruption and scandals leveled against public officials and their families and friends. This change will help to abort this administration's plan to foist the pliant vice president on us, to cover up for them, and thereby escape the searing scrutiny of accountability. But as I have stated, this hot spotlight of accountability is reserved not only for appointees of this administration, it will also be available to sanctioned persons in my own administration who engage in similar conduct. The same anti-corruption strategies and instruments I shall deploy to measure and punish the MPP government appointees will also be applicable to my own appointees. In short, in Ghanaian parlance, Aba Yadebo Techino, Yadebebo Banso. My dear youth, the best of Ghana is yet to come, and I have hope for the future, particularly as I return to the presidency as the experienced, visionary, and decisive leader ready to build the Ghana we want together with you. The Electoral Commission has decided to conduct a mop-up voter registration exercise between 1st August to 3rd August, realizing that many could not participate in the just completed limited registration exercise. I still do not understand why the Electoral Commission in cahoots with government insists it will not bring the voters' registration centers to the doorstep of the people as much as possible in order that all of you can have the opportunity to register. These are young people, many of whom are unemployed and are being taken care of by their suffering parents. They cannot afford the cost of transportation from their homes to the distant district registration offices, not to mention the long queues, the intentional intimidation that takes place by tags and network anomalies that have plagued the exercise ever so often. Even after successfully arriving at the registration center, many of you have had to cope with the disappointment of undue delays. My fellow Ghanaians, just place yourself in the shoes of these young people within the needless and avoidable ordeal that they have to face of persons, say, between 18 and 25 years without a passport or a Ghana card. If such a young lady or young man manages to secure 2 guarantors, pays for their transportation to accompany them to a registration center, and due to network failure and postponements, this young person is unable to register via the guarantor system, what is the likelihood that he or she will return another day to register with these same 2 guarantors? And that is what leads to what is called voter suppression. And this is why I continue to urge the EC to prevent voter suppression by extending the mop-up exercise beyond its district offices to include all the hard-to-reach areas. This will enable Ghanaians who have turned 18 or more but are unregistered to register from the 1st to the 3rd of August. However, let me assure you that no matter the challenges or artificial obstacles they erect in your path to prevent you from exercising your franchise, my victory in the polls shall be your victory. It shall be a victory for all the suffering Ghanaians. It will be a victory for all of us. And I'm sure that's going to happen on 7th December this year. There's a rising feeling of frustration and anger bubbling up amongst our young people. Justifiable anger and frustration against this failed administration. It is anger against the economic mismanagement, the hardships, the widening inequalities in our country, and the unprecedented corruption that has become the signature of this government. And yes, you have every right to be angry and disappointed in this government. It is understandable because this government has received more funds than any other government in the history of our country. Ghana's youth have further experienced how a minister could stash millions of dollars in her home. And only God knows the full extent of Ghanaians' taxpayers' money that is stashed away by many others in this Akuffo Addo and Bawumia-led government. But I say to the good people of Ghana that working with Ghanaians and their international and anti-corruption partners, we shall do all that is humanly possible to retrieve such wrongly acquired wealth. The inequality and selective justice of this government are galling. Otherwise, how could Hawakumsin, who fired a weapon at a registration center and boasted about it, walk away free, and a parliamentary candidate for Ewutu Senya East is detained partly because the very police that issued her with a firearms license misspelled her name? If the government was seeking to break the spirit of Nakoyo with that politically organized arrest, they rather handed over the Ewutu Senya East parliamentary seat to the young woman who by all standards towers over and above the incumbent. My dear youth, while I agree with your justifiable anger and disappointment, I urge you to keep hope alive. Have faith in God and the power of your thumb. Ghanaians are in search of hope. Hope they can believe in. Hope with the assurance that Ghana will be reset onto the path of progress and prosperity. Hope knowing that as young people they can live in safe neighborhoods and earn a living if they study hard, work hard, and live as law-abiding citizens. This is what Ghanaians are yearning for. And this is exactly what I and the NDC are presenting to you in this election of 2024. Exercise your franchise by voting for me, John Mahama, on 7th December this year, and for the NDC parliamentary candidates in your constituency. As your selfless, truthful, experienced and visionary leader, I need your vote to reset Ghana. And I assure you that I'll work with you to build a country of shared growth and prosperity. By resetting Ghana, we will repair the dangerous damage that has been done to our country's economy and people. Businessmen and women who have been giving raw deals by this government's apparatchiks will have their say and can be assured of restoration. Collapsed banks and financial institutions shall be restored after a thorough and unbiased assessment. We will provide decent and well-paying jobs through my 24-hour economy initiative. And let me be clear, I am utterly appalled and disappointed by the unprecedented unemployment rate we're seeing today. Perhaps if the government had not jettisoned the 40-year National Development Plan, which was developed by the NDPC during my presidency, they would have adopted and implemented my 24-hour economy initiative, which was contained in that document. And that would have saved Ghanaians from these levels of unprecedented unemployment. But as the saying goes, elections come with consequences. The stark reality is that the current 8-hour working system is inadequate to create the production, productivity, and well-paying jobs required for the revival of Ghana's currently bankrupt economy. It is also inadequate to produce enough goods and services for export. My young people, extraordinary times require extraordinary interventions for extraordinary results. The 24-hour economy initiative is the answer for now and the future. It will create an enabling environment with deliberate policies for business, companies and government institutions to operate 24/7 in a 3-8-hour shift system. In addition to the traditional 8-hour system, the 2 additional work shifts that my administration will introduce will double and sometimes triple or quadruple the number of jobs that participate in public and private entities that we currently have. This is the 24-hour economy optimization strategy, giving more to society, providing efficient service delivery, and generating decent and well-paying jobs. The benefits of this system will include, but not limited to, 24-hour port and harbor services, 24-hour customs services, 24-hour DVLA services, 24-hour agro-processing factories, 24-hour manufacturing industries, 24-hour construction companies, 24-hour diversified sanitation and waste management services, 24-hour financial institutions, 24-hour healthcare services, not just emergency care, 24-hour community pharmacy care, 24-hour tourism, creative arts and entertainment industry services, and 24-hour retail centers, and more and more and more. My track record in infrastructure development is well acknowledged, and we shall provide more. It is a track record that builds the Ghana National Gas Company and many power plants to fix Dumso. A solid track record of building ultramodern hospitals such as the University of Ghana Medical Center, the Ridge Hospital, the Bank Hospital, the Maritime Hospital, the Dodoa Hospital, and several others across the length and breadth of this country. Whenever I visit patients in these hospitals or read reviews on people's lived experiences at the University of Ghana Medical Center, I feel proud of our work in government, and the NDC is poised to do more. My track record is the urgently needed track record, fueled by vision and experience, that also provided roads, provided interchanges and schools, constructed Terminal 3 at the Kotoka International Airport, transformed Tamale and Kumasi airports into international airports to also operate at night, and secured funding to build new terminals for both Tamale and Kumasi airports, and innovative thinking that secured us one of the most efficient ports in Africa, built us one of the biggest modern markets, KJTI and Kumasi. And I tell you, we'll do much more. We will start the plans and feasibility for the establishment of a new city to which we would move government services and agencies in order to decongest our capital city, Accra. We'll redesign growing metropolises like Aflawo, Kaswa, and others across the country into modern markets and trading centers. As has already been estimated, the Ghana Police Service alone, at its present capacity, will require nearly 25,000 new and additional personnel to manage the 24-hour economy additional working shifts. And keep in mind that the police service, as it stands now, even without the 24-hour economic initiative, already requires additional staff and motivation to meet the optimum police to population ratio. We'll adopt a multi-stakeholder approach because the beneficiaries of the 24-hour economy are diverse. Unemployed youth, including unemployed graduates, farmers, traders, small and medium-scale businesses, students who need vacation jobs, and the underemployed. No one will be left out. I'm determined to provide the necessary incentives such as favorable tax measures, cheaper and reliable power, financial support through the Ghana Exim Bank, oil revenue, and the National Women's Bank, which we will establish to soften the ground for both public and private participants who sign up to the 24-hour economy initiative in order to have a smooth takeoff. My dear Ghanaian youth, I urge you to register for change, and you did. Thank you very much once again for heeding my call for change. Let me reassure you that we shall protect your votes. This election is not going to be business as usual. Through our party executives, we are recruiting competent, committed, and loyal agents at the constituency and branch levels. Personally, I have also tasked the NDC Elections and IT Directorate to rely on our party's robust database to generate potential polling agents. In addition, we are recruiting volunteers, willing young Ghanaians ready and willing to join our campaign efforts in the communities to drive home the message and demand for change. We shall collate our results on time, as we did during the Asin North by-election and the just ended limited voters registration exercise. And on 7th December, if the EC makes any mistakes, we shall promptly correct them. Change is coming, and change must come, because we cannot look unconcerned for the dollar to cross the 20 cedi mark under the watch of the chairman of the so-called solid economic management team. Change is coming, and change must come, because the unemployment rate can possibly cross the 20% mark under the watch of this driver's mate if we do not change direction. Having increased from 8.4% in 2016 to 14.7% in 7.5 short years. But let me end it here and answer some of the questions you sent about the issues I've been raising tonight. I thank you for your kind attention, and God bless you. Mahama coming to do again? Well, my answer to them is that I thank God and the people of Ghana for the opportunity. It's not every person, or let me say every president, who gets the opportunity to come back with experience and with a vision for transforming their country. I did my best when I was president. We did a lot together. We did a lot in the infrastructure space, and the experience that I have gained and the vision and the track record puts me in pole position to be able to do even better. And so I thank God for the opportunity to come back and use that experience garnered after 8 years of reflection on my term in office, and come to do things even better and more than I did in my first term. And so we thank God for the opportunity, and I promise that we're going to work together, especially with you young people of this country, in order to reset our country and put it back on the track to shared growth and prosperity. Thank you, Collins, for that question. And so we'll take the next one. I'm just waiting for the next question. And it's from Christabel Adiboy. I hope I pronounced your name well. And he says that, can your government collaborate with private investment companies to finance, build and maintain major roads, and then toll these roads over a period of time to recoup their investment? Absolutely, Christabel. And when our manifesto comes out, you find out that public-private partnerships and what we call build, operate and transfer BOTs are part of what we intend to do, not only in respect of roads but in respect of other infrastructure. We have done these, successfully in many cases. For instance, the building of the new Tema port was given to the Meridian Port Services that are in partnership with the Ghana Ports and Harbours Authority. And they built one of the most efficient ports in the whole of Africa using public-private partnerships. And so highways and other infrastructure, bridges, would allow the private sector to partner with government, build them, and we told them if it takes 25 years for them to recoup their investments with profits, we will be willing to do so, so that we're able to give Ghanaians the kind of infrastructure they deserve. Thank you, Christabel, for your question. This is from Mickey Atta, and it says, my visionary president, what measures is your government going to put in place to better the conditions of service of the suffering Ghanaian teacher? I've said that several of the difficulties and challenges that our teachers face, especially for rural teachers, one is accommodation. And so one of the things we're going to do is that in designing any school at the basic level or at the secondary level, that design must include accommodation for teachers, so that when teachers are posted to school, they don't have to live in an adjoining town and have to take transport to go to and from work. Already they face an issue with the adequacy of their salaries, and so it makes it even more difficult if they have to pay transport to and from work. We'll have other incentives which will encourage teachers who go and serve in the rural areas. And when I spoke with the teachers' unions, we agreed that finally we'll do the mapping out of which schools are considered rural schools, and teachers who agree to serve in those schools will get a 20% allowance of basic salary as an incentive for them agreeing to serve in rural schools. We also talked about cancellation of teachers' licensure exams, so that when teachers come out of school, their final exam in training school will be the process for licensing them, so that they don't have to come back and take another exam. We've also discussed with the teachers about their promotion and the constraint that is created when they get to the position of deputy director, and that is an issue that we're willing to sit down with the teachers and resolve. In many cases, I've been asked about other issues to do with premiums and other allowances and so on and so forth, and I've been constrained to respond because we know the crisis in which we find our country, the mess in which our economy is. One thing I've promised you is that I'll promise you a leaner government, we'll have fewer ministers, we'll cut government expenditure, so that any savings that we make, we can use it to better the lives of hard-working teachers and other professionals. Thank you, Mickey, for that question. This is Elvis Akuffo Addo from Goso. Thank you, Elvis, for this question from far away Goso. Thank you so much. And he says, please sir, I heard you, the question has, please sir, I heard you talk about the National Drivers' Day, and I'll be grateful if you could explain further, because I think it's a good move to honor our drivers. We all know the carnage on our roads and the accidents that take place every day, taking lives of our loved ones and causing horrendous injury to many of our family and relations. We believe that just as we have the National Teachers' Day, where we honor the best teachers, we can have a National Drivers' Day, where in every region we'll choose the best driver who has driven for years without accident, who observes the road regulations, who keeps his car well serviced and in good condition. We'll identify all those drivers over the regions and we'll honor them. We'll also at the national level have the national best driver, and we'll honor him, give them some rewards, so that it encourages other drivers to emulate them. But let me point out, the National Drivers' Day is not going to be a holiday. Like the Teachers' Day, if it's a working day, we'll go to work, but we will have an event that honors the best drivers, not only nationally but in all the regions. Thank you very much for that question from Goso. The Daily Bright, and he says, Mr. President, can you and your party protect my vote and the votes of Ghanaians? The Daily, I wish to promise you that we will protect your votes. Our Elections Directorate and our IT Directorate are working very hard, and we're putting the right things in place to make sure that this election is transparent, free and fair, because we are of the utmost belief that if the election is transparent and fair, the NDC would win the election. And so we're doing everything to protect your vote. Vote for change, vote for John Mahama, vote for your NDC parliamentary candidate, and I assure you we're going to put the right people in place in all the polling stations to make sure that everything is done transparently and fairly. And it's my expectation that the EC, the security services, and everybody who is supposed to be involved in this election will also do their best to make sure that everything is done right. Your duty is to go cast your vote for John Mahama, cast your vote for your NDC parliamentary candidate, and I can assure you your vote will count. We will make sure your vote is protected. Thank you, the Delhi. Next one. One main challenge your government will face if you win is how to salvage the economy. Even with the IMF program, they are still sinking it. And Ghanaians are, what will you do differently to restore investor confidence, create jobs, etc.? It's taking 7.5 years for this government to totally, bring an economy to its knees. Indeed, these 7.5 years are a lesson in how not to run an economy. We started with 125 ministers, huge government expenditures. Government expenditure ballooned. We put money into things that did not yield any direct benefit to the people. There are many one district, one factories that are not operating. They have no equipment in them, and yet billions of cedis were put into these factories. We have one village, one dams that are not fit for purpose. There's no dry season agriculture taking place there, and yet billions of cedis were pumped into these things. And so I have promised that we're going to open the books. We'll tell Ghanaians what the state of the economy is, because we must work together to create so that we can share. You can't share when you haven't created. And the thrust of our economic policy is going to be the 24-hour economic policy. And as I said, that is a policy that is going to incentivize our existing manufacturers, businesses and services to add on additional shifts and produce more. If we produce more under the African Continental Free Trade Area, we can export the excess to other African countries. If we produce more under the ECOWAS Trade Liberalization Scheme, we can export into the ECOWAS market. The thrust of our economic policy is going to be with agribusiness and agriculture, because that would be the bedrock of our economy. Import substitution is going to be important. For instance, it comes as a surprise to people that we import palm oil into this country, and yet Malaysia and Indonesia, from where we import the palm oil, took the palm seeds from West Africa. And so we're going to increase the production of oil palm so that we can stop and cut down the importation of vegetable cooking oil. We're going to increase the production of rice so that we can cut down the importation of rice. We did that when we were in office. We cut down the importation of rice in the years towards the middle of our administration. We're going to produce more tomatoes so that we cut down the importation of tomatoes. And so import substitution is going to be the way to go. We're going to build agro-processing zones in all the regions. And so every region will have an agro-processing zone and an agribusiness zone. We will provide the roads into the agribusiness zone. We will bring electricity and water. So if you're an investor who wants to go into agro-processing, the land will be there, the electricity will be there, the water will be there, there will be a road going to the agribusiness zone. And so all you have to do is to come and set up your factory, put your equipment in, buy the produce and start producing. And each of the agribusiness zones will be tailored towards the crops that that region has a comparative advantage to produce. So for instance, in Bono and Bono East, definitely cashew processing is going to be one of the things we are looking at. In that area too, they produce a lot of cassava. So processing cassava starch and cassava flour for the biscuit industry, for the brewery industry, for exports are some of the things that we're going to look at. If you go to OT, they produce a lot of rice, they produce ginger. We would have ginger factories in OT to process the ginger the farmers there are producing into ginger oil, ginger powder, both for local use and for exports. If you go to other regions have advantages. The north has a lot of soya bean, is producing a lot of soya bean, and so soya bean processing will be available in the north. We're going to revamp the cotton industry so that we'll have cotton generous producing again in the north. We're going to bring textile manufacturing companies so that we will produce the cotton, we will feed them to the textile manufacturing companies so that they can make textiles and garments for export to America and the AGOA and all the other trade incentives that we have. And so there's a lot that we have on our plate. We're going to incentivize the pharmaceutical sector because we want Ghana to become the pharmaceutical hub for the whole of West Africa, and if not for Africa. In my first term I did it when I gave the pharmaceutical companies, manufacturing companies, support to expand their production, and they did that. And based on that, we started exporting to Sierra Leone, to Liberia, to Burkina Faso, to Mali. We're going to do it again and do it even bigger. Aside from that, a thrust of our economic policy would be to give advantage to Ghanaian registered businesses. If you are manufacturing a product in Ghana, we would use government spending ability and government spending muscle to give you first priority rather than buy an imported product. And so if we have a cough syrup produced in Ghana, we are better off buying our cough syrup than importing that cough syrup from India. Or if we want to buy analgesics for the Ghana Health Service, we are better off buying analgesics, paracetamol, and all the other painkillers produced in Ghana than importing them. And so we're going to give an advantage to private sector in Ghana to be able to expand their production and get a good market so that we can build prosperity for ourselves. And let's go on. The Rudolph Kojo Mante, and Kojo says that the current government has polluted the security services. That's a very interesting word, polluted security services. What are the three key things to do to normalize the above mess? The security services are manned by Ghanaians, and I don't have a problem with the men and women in uniform as long as they act professionally. They should always remember that they are servants of the state and they are supposed to give service to the state of Ghana and not be used by any political party or any administration as an extension of that party. And so I urge our men and women in uniform to act professionally. We're not going to come into office and go persecuting any people in the security services. Indeed, we need more Ghanaians to come into the security services. But to solve some of the problems that have happened in the past, where we have accusations of selective recruitment and so on and so forth, as I announced before, we're going to decentralize the recruitment of the personnel into the security services. So every year, if we know the number that we're going to take into immigration and fire service, in police, in the army and all that, we're going to have a unified application form. And so if you want to serve in the security services, you fill that form and you indicate whether you want to go to immigration or you want police service or you want army. And then all the services will do their recruitment, but they will do it on a regional basis, so that we want every Ghanaian, no matter where you live in this country, to have an opportunity, if you want to serve in our security services, to be able to do so. And so the recruiting officers will come to your region, you will go, you will do the exam or whatever they want. If you pass, you are taken into the service. And every year, anytime we have to do recruitment, we'll go through the same process so that the security services have a fair representation of our whole country in those services. And under my administration, I'm not going to use the security services in a partisan manner like they have been used these last few years. We're going to enjoin the security services to be well trained. We're going to provide them with the training so that they are able to discharge their constitutional mandate to the people of Ghana. And then I have Kofi Banafu, who says, did I hear the former president talk about restoring licenses of collapsed banks? Yes, you did, Kofi. I said that we're going to go through the processes that led to the collapse of the banks. And for the cases in which those closures were unjustified, we would restore the licenses. We are looking at a tiered banking system. One of the reasons for the closure of these banks was that they could not raise the capital reserve ratio that the Bank of Ghana had asked for, which was 400 million Ghana cedis. Now the point I make is that we should have a tiered banking system where you have the big banks who should have a reserve ratio of 400 million. You can have mid-sized banks that should have a reserve ratio of say 200 million, and you can have micro banks that with a reserve of 80 million to 100 million can have a license to operate, because all these banks cater to different segments of our business environment. And so the Unilevers and others who are big companies can deal with the Class A banks, but the small and medium enterprises need smaller banks that are able to give them service. And because of the risk involved in small and medium enterprises, of course they would have more risk, and that's why they are the kinds of banks that somebody would close down. And so yes, we're going to look into the processes that led to the closure of those banks. I know that some of those cases are in court. We are hoping that the cases will be adjudicated, and when they are adjudicated, if we have taken an unbiased look at the circumstances in which they were closed, for those that were unjustified, our government will be willing to restore their licenses so that they can continue with their work. There are a lot of people who lost their jobs, more than 10,000 bankers. Some have become bakers, some are traders, some are Uber drivers. It will give them an opportunity to be able to go back to work. So to conclude, I thank you very much for your questions. The time has been painfully short, and it's my hope that we'll be able to make more time in these live sessions to be able to answer more of your questions. But my dear Ghanaian youth, I urge you to register for change, and of course you heeded to my call, you did. And I thank you very much once again for heeding my call for change. It is critical that we take advantage of this opportunity on 7th December to change the dangerous trajectory on which our country is currently embarked on. And let me assure you that I shall protect your votes. Your votes will count for something in this election. And like I said, 7th December 2024, presidential and parliamentary elections are not going to be business as usual. I thank you very much. God richly bless you, and have a good evening.
Story OT Cecelia no a platform my friend PENDREAM TV and I OT story no na o feedback we hear empa story our tie no any story be our platform no so be our tie o pese o my feedback no fafa WhatsApp message or WhatsApp number 0277128777 na yebebo e wo PENDREAM FM Ghana for nyina ate won ka
Debi kama mamena PENDREAM TV ase na so far so good say open online portal e wo Ghana nipa share nipa follow nipa comment here to my best of knowledge without any biases PENDREAM TV.